that this is an amazing opportunity for us to become more of who we have chosen to be as human beings, not less. Now, I know that if part of that involves physical contact with a lot of people, or it feels like you can only find yourself in social settings, this may be a difficult time to do it. But maybe it's a time to be creative in such a way that we do figure out how to make the most of this in whatever settings we can find. I'm struck, really, by the idea that this time of being away from others is so much like being a monk, and that monks withdraw themselves from society for a while so that they can go deeper and deeper into who they are. Limited amount of contact we have with people and the lack of social engagements that we're used to might be really, truly an invitation for us as a community, as individuals, and nearly as the world, to go deeper into ourselves and to find out the core of who we are without the external experiences. This is a rare time, an opportune time for us to find out what it is we've really been looking for. Because you know what we've really been looking for all our lives is ourselves. We say we want to find ourselves, and that's a common way of saying it. And many people think they'll find themselves in the work they do, and they'll find expression in the work they do. And many people think they'll find themselves in the relationships they have, and they'll explore themselves in those relationships. But to really find themselves is not going to be found out in either the relationship or in the work, but in the looking and seeing who's inside here, who's really here. This journey, this pilgrimage of a sort, is really inward. And we can choose to go along with it. And even more so, we can choose to accept it and engage with it. Acceptance is how we should confront those difficulties of our lives, as well as what's working well. We treat the whole world, all of the events that are happening to us, we treat them with acceptance. And with deeper and deeper suffering and the acceptance of deeper and deeper levels to get to acceptance of the deep suffering is what burns off karma and brings us to a state of purity and of the ability to actually feel our oneness with everything. And I would like to talk to you about deep acceptance of yourself. So as children, we incorporate this feeling that there's something wrong with us. And this incorporation of the feeling that something is wrong with us remains with us throughout our lives. And so we go about our lives trying to prove that we're okay. Imagine that instead of running for approval, you began to accept those parts of yourself that you don't think are acceptable. And that you began to reparent yourself through this activity of self-acceptance. You began to feel into the whole of you, and that feeling into the whole of you, you could realize that there are parts of you that you accept and parts you do not accept. The way to deal with this is not to push it away, but to find an opening in your heart for loving them, loving that part of yourself. If not loving it, accepting. Coming to accept that you have some ugly aspects of yourself. You have some parts that you have denied and rejected. Shadow sides have a chance to become more visible. And we could hate it that they're coming about, or we could move to a higher state of awareness, which is acceptance. Acceptance, we don't have to act it all out, but we need to come to a place where we recognize within ourselves these ugly parts. And they're there. They're probably not really ugly. They just have been labeled. There is going to be a very likelihood that your shadow side will come up. What you think is missing in you will come up. And as it comes up, you can reject it or run from it or deny it or whatever, or hold your breath until it goes away. Or you can engage with it and experience it and accept it. And acceptance, letting your breath be full and deep and your heart open, this is the conditions that allow your mind to come to acceptance. We're going to be working over the next few weeks, carrying this idea that I'm a spiritual person from the idea of concept through the difficulties of acceptance to the level of real acceptance and knowing that you are the divine, that you are not only human, which is brilliantly wonderful, but you're also divine. And to come to acceptance of both those aspects. So we're not going to gloss over our dark side. We're not going to deny it. We're going to engage it. We're not going to do what some people call spiritual bypassing. We're not going to say, oh, there's no problem. I'm a spiritual person. We're not doing that. We're taking it the last mile. The last mile is a phrase that I think we would like to use for this whole series of 3 more talks. The last mile being this concept. When they deliver power to your house, they run the big power lines and they run it all the way down the street. But the last mile is going from the pole to your house. And this is what's really an expensive proposition for the power company, but it's the only thing that makes it of any value anyway, is that it gets all the way into your house. And so that spiritual concepts that we have been working with for years need to come all the way into our consciousness. And the first one I would like us to work on is this idea of acceptance. As we become more accepting, we will find that all our suffering is leading us into a sense of grace and fulfillment.